If you want turn-based RPGs that get to the good stuff before your free time evaporates, these 8 picks get in, hit hard, and don't turn into a 90-hour life event. Sea of Stars is probably the easiest game on this list to recommend to almost anyone. It has that polished modern retro look people instantly understand, but it backs it up with turn-based combat that stays active through timed hits, lock-breaking, combo attacks, and just enough dungeon traversal to keep the whole thing moving. More importantly, it gives you a real sense of adventure without feeling like it's trying to occupy your entire month. You get a bright, confident world, a complete RPG arc and pacing that stays much lighter than the genre usually does. It's also the least hidden pick here, so I'm not going to pretend you've never heard of it, but if the goal is finding games that feel substantial without becoming ridiculous commitments, it absolutely earns the opening slot. If Sea of Stars is the polished crowd pleaser in this lineup, Chained Echoes is the one that pushes that same retro appeal into something a little sharper and more systems hungry. This is a denser game than some of the other picks here, but it makes the list because it cuts a lot of the old JRPG waste. Battles move quickly, the overdrive system keeps you engaged, progression is built to reduce mindless grinding, and the whole thing feels far more intentional than a lot of throwback RPGs that just copy the old shape and call it a day. It still gives you party building, world-spanning stakes, and even mech combat later on, so it never feels small in ambition. It just feels smarter about your time than a lot of the classics it clearly loves. And if you want that same modern efficiency without staying in classic JRPG territory, Cassette Beasts takes the turn-based structure somewhere weirder and much more playful. On paper, the pitch sounds dangerously close to indie Pokemon, but that undersells it immediately. The fusion system gives battles a lot more personality. The world has a genuinely odd identity, and the whole setup feels more flexible and inventive than the obvious comparison suggests. It also helps that the game doesn't feel bloated. You still get exploration, collecting, and plenty of experimentation, but in a way that feels manageable for someone with an actual schedule. If you like monster collector RPGs and you've been waiting for one that feels both familiar and smarter than expected, this is one of the easiest picks on the whole list. From there, it makes sense to swing back towards something more traditional, because Rise of the Third Power delivers that classic party-based feel without letting the adventure spiral out of control. This is a very good example of a game that feels fuller than its footprint. You've got a fixed cast, a politically charged fantasy setup, solid turn-based combat, and enough writing focus to give the whole thing real momentum without bloating it into some giant prestige epic. It doesn't reinvent the genre, and that's honestly part of the appeal. The charm is that it knows exactly what kind of RPG it wants to be, then executes that in a compact, disciplined way. If you miss old-school console RPG structure, but not the padding those games often came with, this is a very comfortable recommendation. If Rise of the Third Power is the focused, old-school fantasy option, Cosmic Star Heroine is what happens when that same discipline gets dropped into a much faster sci-fi frame. This thing moves. The battle system is built around abilities that need to be refreshed instead of spammed forever, which gives every encounter a snappier rhythm. And the entire game seems designed around one beautiful idea: stop wasting the player's time. It's stylish, compact, and refreshingly willing to get in, do the job, and leave before the genre's usual bad habits show up. The sci-fi spy flavor helps too, because it makes the whole recommendation feel less like another generic retro fantasy throwback. If you want a turn-based RPG that feels intentionally engineered to avoid filler, this is one of the strongest answers in the whole video. But if you want less story momentum and more room to disappear into systems, Crystal Project takes the same turn-based backbone and opens it up in a very different way. This is the pick for people who care more about jobs, party setups, threat management, and exploration freedom than they do about big cinematic story beats. The combat is clean and readable, the class experimentation is the real rabbit hole, and the open-ended structure makes discovery feel surprisingly personal. It's not as immediately inviting as some of the more polished, narrative-heavy games here, and I wouldn't sell it that way, but it absolutely respects your time if what you want is meaningful play instead of endless cutscene bloat. For systems-first RPG players, this is exactly the kind of game that can quietly eat a week without ever feeling wasteful.
I have a real bad feeling about this.
After all that open-ended experimentation, Jack Move is the perfect snapback to something compact, stylish, and aggressively easy to fit into a busy week.
The moment I saw that woman.
This is one of the purest examples of the whole video premise. It's a small cyberpunk turn-based RPG with a strong visual identity, quick pacing, and just enough combat and character building to feel satisfying without pretending it needs to be some sprawling genre monument. That compactness is the real selling point. A lot of RPGs ask you to forgive their excess because they eventually become great. Jack Move is much more honest than that. It shows up, looks cool, does its job, and gets out before the welcome starts wearing thin. If your dream RPG recommendation is good, stylish, and over before burnout kicks in, this one gets it. If you're into lists like this, like and subscribe, then tell me which one you'd tackle first and what I missed. And if Jack Move still sounds too substantial, This Way Madness Lies is here to prove the genre can get even shorter, stranger, and more shamelessly efficient. This might be the most niche recommendation in the whole lineup, because the magical girl Shakespeare premise is either going to charm you instantly or send you running for the exit. But for this specific video, it fits beautifully. It's compact to an almost suspicious degree, the turn-based combat moves fast, and the game never hangs around long enough to become exhausting. More importantly, it leaves an impression, which is not always true of shorter RPGs. This one is weird on purpose, fast on purpose, and small on purpose. And honestly, that kind of self-awareness is exactly why it makes such a strong closer for a list built around RPGs that understand you have other things to do.